Welcome to PHT Eternal Mysteries, where the epic tales of history's greatest empires come alive. Today, we embark on a journey through time to uncover the top 10 greatest empires in human history. Perhaps as you hear these stories, you might even recognize an empire you've commanded in a strategy game. These are the empires that shaped our world, remarkable not only for their vast reach, but also for their enduring legacies. The Roman Empire. We begin with one of the most iconic names in history, the Roman Empire. Not only was it the most famous, but it was also among the longest-lasting empires the world has ever seen. Spanning multiple eras, its story stretches from 27 BC to AD 1453, an astonishing lifespan of nearly 1,300 years. Before the empire rose, the Roman Republic had already fallen, brought down by fierce struggles for power. This turmoil culminated in Julius Caesar being appointed as emperor, a turning point that would reshape the course of Western civilization. At its height, Rome expanded across the lands we now know as Italy and much of the Mediterranean. But as the empire grew, so did the challenges of governance. Realizing the difficulties of ruling such an enormous realm, its leaders made a dramatic decision. They split the empire into two, east and west, with the dividing line in what is now eastern Italy. Each half had its own emperor, both bearing the title Augustus. This division gave rise to the Western Roman Empire and the Eastern Roman Empire. The West fell in AD 476, when Germanic forces rose up and forced the emperor to abdicate. The East, however, known to history as the Byzantine Empire, continued to thrive. From its glittering capital, Constantinople, the Eastern Empire stood as a superpower in both the Middle East and Europe. Known as the Golden City for its immense wealth and prosperity, it was also called Nova Roma, the New Rome. But its glory came to an end in AD 1453, when the Ottoman Turks stormed its gates. The conquerors would later rename the city Istanbul in 1930. The Kingdom of Kush. Next, we travel to ancient Africa and the Kingdom of Kush, which lasted from 1069 BC to AD 330. Although less familiar to many, Kush once thrived in the region we now call Sudan. Little is known about its exact political structure, though evidence suggests a monarchy existed in its later years. Kush held sway over numerous smaller states, projecting its influence across the region. Its economy was built on the trade of iron and gold. Yet, there was a price. The empire's heavy reliance on iron production led to widespread deforestation. With their forests gone, the people were forced to migrate, lacking the wood needed for smelting ore. Unlike other empires that fell due to oppression or failed diplomacy, Kush's downfall was rooted in nature's limits, a sobering reminder that even great powers can be undone by the environment they depend on. The Holy Roman Empire. Third on our list is the Holy Roman Empire, which stood from AD 800 to 1806, a grand attempt to revive the legacy of Western Rome. Centered in what is now Central Europe, it encompassed vast territories, including the whole of modern-day Germany. Its birth was marked by Otto I's rise to power as King of Germany, becoming the first Holy Roman Emperor. At its peak, the empire commanded over 300 semi-independent states, a patchwork of principalities, duchies, and kingdoms bound under the imperial crown. But by the early 19th century, the empire's cohesion had unraveled. Nationalist movements and calls for independence surged across its many states. In 1806, Napoleon Bonaparte dealt the final blow, forcing Emperor Francis II to abdicate. Thus ended a realm that had endured for over a millennium, undone as much by internal division as by foreign conquest. The empire weakened rapidly and ultimately collapsed. Our fourth empire on this journey is the Republic of Venice, a maritime powerhouse whose pride and glory lay in its mighty navy. This formidable fleet allowed Venice to dominate across Europe and the Mediterranean, capturing some of the most historically important cities, including the island of Cyprus. Remarkably, the Republic endured for an astonishing 100 years, from AD 697 to AD 1797. Over the centuries, Venice expanded its influence far and wide, becoming synonymous with wealth, trade, and naval supremacy. Its later history was shaped by conflicts with the Ottoman Empire. Venice serves as a striking example of an empire that pushed its borders so far that it could no longer defend its own heartland. Unlike many other empires that fell to civil wars, Venice met its end through wars with neighboring states. Though its navy was highly regarded and always ready for offensive action, it became dangerously overstretched, leaving the Republic vulnerable to attacks from all sides. In fifth place, we turn to the Silla Kingdom, also known as Tanla. Lasting from 57 BC to AD 935, Silla began as a small tribal state before rising to become one of the longest ruling kingdoms in East Asian history. Historical records note several different Chinese character names for Silla, including Tu Lo, Tu La, and Tu La. The kingdom was founded on the Korean peninsula by a leader named Bak Hyokjeose, remembered as the progenitor of the Bak, or Pak clan. Though the Bak clan founded Silla, it was the Kim clan that held real power for most of the kingdom's 900-year history. Initially just one tribe within a loose confederation, and allied with China's Tang dynasty, Silla eventually conquered rival states on the peninsula. Over time, it unified most of Korea under its rule. After nearly a millennium, Silla collapsed rapidly during Korea's later Three Kingdoms period, passing leadership to the Goryeo dynasty in 935. Interestingly, Korea's Three Kingdoms period shares a name with the famous Chinese era, but is entirely distinct. In sixth place is an African power, the Kanem Empire. Existing from AD 700 to AD 1396, it ruled over an area that now spans Chad, Libya, Niger, Nigeria, and Cameroon. The empire reached its greatest territorial extent in the 13th century, only to decline a century later. Eventually, Kanem fell under the assault of foreign invaders. Continuing in Africa, we reach seventh place, the Ethiopian Empire, which lasted from AD 1270 to 1974. Remarkably, Ethiopia and Liberia were the only two African nations to maintain sovereignty during the height of European colonial expansion in Africa. Ethiopia's imperial era began around AD 1270, but its decline started in 1895 when Italy declared war. In 1935, Mussolini ordered the invasion of Ethiopia, leading to a brutal 7-month conflict. The Italians emerged victorious and ruled the country from 1936 to 1941. Unlike many empires that collapsed due to overexpansion or resource exhaustion, Ethiopia possessed highly desirable resources, especially coffee, coveted by more powerful nations. But internal civil wars weakened the empire, and the extended Italian occupation ultimately brought its long reign to an end. We now arrive at the final three empires on our journey through history. Our next destination takes us to Southeast Asia, the Khmer Empire. Its golden age spanned the 12th and early 13th centuries. Though perhaps not as famous as some of the other great powers, the Khmer capital of Angkor stands as a cultural masterpiece. Thanks in part to Angkor Wat, one of the largest religious monuments in the world, built during the empire's height of prosperity. The Khmer Empire began around AD 802, when its monarch ruled over the lands corresponding to modern-day Cambodia. More than 630 years later, in 1432, the empire collapsed. Much of what we know today comes from stone carvings and the records of a Chinese diplomat named Zhou Daguan, who visited Angkor in the late 13th century and published his observations in Customs of Cambodia. Throughout its history, the Khmer Empire waged wars of expansion, seizing surrounding territories. Angkor became home to the empire's nobility in the later half of its existence. Neighboring civilizations sought to control the city as Khmer power declined. There are many theories explaining its fall. Some believe that a king adopted the Theravada, Buddhist philosophy, leading to a reduced labor force, the decline of irrigation systems, and ultimately poor harvests. Others suggest that the Thai kingdom conquered Angkor in the 15th century. Another theory holds that the fall began when the capital was relocated, leaving Angkor abandoned and forgotten. Whatever the cause, the Khmer Empire remains a striking example of a civilization that expanded too quickly without sustaining its internal strength, making its downfall all but inevitable. In ninth place, we have the Ottoman Empire. At its zenith, the Ottomans ruled across 3 continents, Asia, Europe, and Africa, encompassing a vast array of cultures, religions, and languages. Remarkably, despite these differences, the empire thrived for more than 6 centuries, from 1299 to 1922, yet inflation and unemployment became major factors in its decline. The empire's immense territories were diverse in culture and economy, and eventually internal independence movements surged. Weak governance fragmented the empire from within, paving the way for its ultimate collapse. And finally, we reach the most recent empire to fall, the Portuguese Empire. Renowned as one of the most formidable naval powers in history, Portugal held on to its final overseas territory until as late as 999. The Portuguese Empire began in 1415 with the capture of Ceuta, a Muslim city in North Africa. From there, they expanded their rule to parts of Africa, Asia, and the Americas. It was the first empire in history to span 5 continents. After World War II, independence movements erupted across the globe, forcing many European powers to relinquish their colonies. Yet Portugal held on until 1999, when it returned Macau to China, ending a 584-year-old empire. This empire grew rapidly, powered by superior weaponry and ample manpower to conquer and administer distant lands. But, as with so many others, its conquered territories eventually found ways to reclaim their independence. In the end, a combination of international pressure and economic strain brought the Portuguese Empire to its close. So, among all these remarkable empires, which one impresses you the most? Share your thoughts in the comments, even if it's an empire you've once commanded in a game. Thank you for joining us on this journey through history. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and ring the notification bell so you never miss another epic tale. This is PHT Eternal Mysteries, where the past is never forgotten. Until next time, farewell.